Hi, I'm Dan Schmitt. I do a weekly television show called Team Chicago Challenge. My website is teamchicago.tv. My email is teamdan45@gmail.com. We're going to continue with the history of myself, the history of motorcycle racing in the Midwest. I'm joined with my granddaughter Alyssa, and we're going to go through my photo album and continue to tell the story about motorcycle racing and how great it was back in the 80s and into the 90s, and pretty good stuff.
Yeah, so we're just looking at the footage from Lamb's Farm. So who's Bill Sparks?
All right, so Bill Sparks, he was the parts manager at Lake County Cycle, worked for John Schwartz, and he was, but then he was always working for a Yamaha dealer. He was always involved with the parts, and he approached me, or we were always friends. You know, here's another person that was part of the whole mix with the ice racing. Like I said, the ice race in Mineola, I was getting help from Al Bloom and Linda Bloom. Paul Remvis came on the scene. He brought guys down. He moved up to Zonia, Wisconsin, and the guys would come down and help set up the track at Mineola. So there was always people involved, and Bill Sparks was always around, and he approached me to help him put on. He talked to the AMA to put on the Amateur National Championship, which was always being held in Michigan. So to bring it over to Illinois, in Lamb's Farm in Libertyville, it's right off the tollway. It's for mentally challenged youth and adults. And they have a restaurant, they have a petting farm, and he approached them about doing this big race at Lamb's Farm, give great exposure to Lamb Farm, give great exposure to ice racing. And Reno, Maya Nori, one of his children was in Lamb's Farm, and he had a bad heart, and he was retired or collecting disability, and he shows up with this real camera. And that was my first exposure to public access television.
Wow. So
one of the things we did was also put together a program, and I was the editor of the program, and then you could see over here there's some articles about the race, because anything I do, I want to make sure we get publicity out there. So you look at some of the articles, there's from the Sun-Times. You can show, in fact, the ice was so thin that we were hand shoveling the ice because we couldn't plow it with a truck, but there's more photos there. In fact, that 45 with the red shirt, that's your dad.
Oh, wow.
Riding my, in fact, that was probably, has that got a red engine, that bike?
Yeah.
All right, that's the air-cooled Honda that we were ice racing, and I think I mentioned it last week or 2 weeks ago, that was probably one of the best bikes. It was a champion frame with that 79 Honda motor, and that thing was perfect. That was a great motorcycle. You can ask your dad about that. But we're just lucky. That one picture shows Lamb Farm, all the bikes lined up with the houses in the background. So we were, you know, it was a big deal. I mean, It was a big deal, besides running the Mineola thing. So if you turn the page to the next one, okay. So that's 83.
Mm-hmm.
Also in 83, now we're getting into the road race deal, and 4 and 6.
So did you do road racing like after? Like, did you get into road racing after ice racing?
Well, we did everything.
Oh, like
ice racing's in the winter.
Yeah.
And then Daytona's in March. So while I'm promoting the Mineola thing and the Lamb's Farm thing, because that was still running every week, and driving the coffee truck.
Yeah.
Then at 4 and 6, we're building this Seika, the 750 shaft drive. So it's not the bike to go road race, because with a shaft drive, you don't have a chain. It's not easy to change gears. We found that we had a gear. Somebody made a gear for it so we could road race it, so we could run faster. AMA is American Motorcyclist Association. It's the national sanctioning body. It is it. Anything that is organized racing in America, the majority of it is AMA sanctioned, meaning it's got proper rules. you need rules to have fairness. I mean, you can't run classes if someone's going to be cheating.
Right.
So the whole concept of the AMA was created in 1924. And they went through Class A racing, Class C racing, road racing. They were running, they would call, like the Daytona when they're running on the beach. In fact, as long as we're talking about it, I'm going to show some footage of motorcycles running on the beach, a 200-mile race at Daytona. And that's what they did in the late, starting in 37, they ran on the beach. Oh. Then the war came, there's no races, you know, World War II.
Right.
And then they started races again after World War II. So they were running on the beach. Now I'm going to show you that footage as I'm talking. And then they built Daytona Speedway in 63 or 62, something like that. So AMA road racing, Daytona is known for the 500-mile race. That used to be the race that would kick off NASCAR.
Yeah.
The same beach course that the motorcycles were racing on, they would also race cars on that beach course.
Oh, wow.
And then they ended up running the same 2 miles down, back up, 2 miles down A1A, and back north on the beach. Motorcycles and cars, and that's France. Bill France was the promoter. Then they moved it to the racetrack in 63. Road racing at Daytona was a 200-mile race on the course. The bikes that were running the 200-mile was Formula One race, they called it. Basically, road racing went from Class C racing, which was 750 bikes. When Gary Nixon won the 200-miler, he was running a 500cc Triumph that had overhead valves. So bikes that were twin-cylinder, 500cc, overhead valves, and they were running that on the road course. If you had a side valve engine like Harley Davidson's, they could go to 750, but because they're a side valve engine or a flathead engine, they can't make as much horsepower because the breathing between the head design and all that. So that eventually evolved from running basically street-type bikes, so they'd run BSAs and Nortons and on the road course. Then Yamaha came out with the TZ 350, which was a 350 two-stroke, and that was making as much power and as fast as a 750 Harley or a 500 Triumph. And even when they changed the rules to 750 for everything, a guy with the 350, I think Don Emdy, might have won the 200-mile on a 350 two-stroke Yamaha. Then Yamaha came out with the 750 TZ, and all of a sudden, Harley Davidson road racers running the Twins and Triumph were not competitive. When they went to big bore 750 two-strokes, all the four-strokes became uncompetitive. So then the formula for Daytona 200-mile, starting in maybe 1980, 1979, became Yamaha TZs. A couple people had Suzuki Water Buffalo 4-cylinders, Kawasaki. Gary Nixon ran Kawasaki 3-cylinder 750. 4 strokes were done. So that became the norm. In 1983, and we knew this was coming when I got into road racing, that superbikes, because they were running superbikes in Europe, which were going back to production-based motorcycles, road racing. Whereas the TZ never had a street bike. It was never a production bike. But they were making enough of them that people could buy them, so they were legal. So there was things changing. So the first superbike race at Daytona was in 1983. Prior to that, and that was going to be the Saturday race. Prior to that, the 100-mile race on Saturday was for 250s. So Gary Nixon won that a bunch of times running 250 Yamahas. But 83 was the first, so I was part of the first ever superbike race at Daytona in 1983.
Wow, that's awesome.
So if you look on the results there, I finished 39th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
According to Jimmy, who was at the track with us, I was running up to 14th in the race.
Wow.
I had an electrical problem. I didn't finish the race. I was out of the race. The bike broke. Look behind, who finished behind me. There was factory Honda guys, Fred Merkel, Roberto Pietri. I did better than them, but they broke earlier.
Yeah.
But still, I broke, and that's why I finished 39th. Maybe if the bike would have ran, I might have finished in the top 20.
Yeah.
So that was a great start. Now, if you turn the page over, so we were ready to run this whole superbike class. I also ran 3 more races that year. I ran Mid-Ohio, Buzz Pritt's, let me borrow his Honda. As you can see, my name doesn't show up because I only could find the results for the top 20.
Yeah.
But I know I finished, probably in Mid-Ohio, I probably finished in the top 30. At Road America, in practice, this is how fast the Seiko was. Now, the factory Hondas were running Interceptors, and they were fast. In practice at Road America, which has the longest straightaways of any racetrack, that Seiko was as fast as the factory. Steve Weiss was in front of me. Roberto Pietri was behind me in practice. I stayed right with them all the way around the racetrack. So my Seiko was as fast as them.
Yeah.
I had an electrical problem. I didn't make the final. Then I went to Brainerd. I was running good at Brainerd, but there's one real fast corner, Brainerd. You got this straightaway, you come around, but there was one, and I went completely sideways.
Oh, man.
I didn't crash. I didn't finish in the top 20. I finished that race, but
Yeah.
it was a hard pounder.
I bet.
So then, and now you're seeing the WERA stuff, my WERA license. So then I was really racing more WERA stuff. I mean, Daytona is Daytona. There's no, I mean, I'm running WERA stuff to improve my skills road racing. And I think I might have ran a couple races with the Seiko, but that year was, you know, but we were working. I mean, we were working in the shop to get ready for 1984 with the Seiko.
Yeah.
But right now I'm showing you the Midwest Championship, and that's another book I put together, Lamb's Farm again. I'm still doing the races at Mineola. Turn the page, and right down there you can see the schedule. I was working with Bruce Bober. He was doing races at Lake Marie, which is part of Twin Lakes. If I ran a Saturday, he ran Sunday. Then next week he'd run Saturday and I'd run Sunday. We were going back and forth. So if you were living in Chicagoland, you could make like 15 ice races that winter between Lake Marie and Fox Lake, Mineola, and we ran Cambria, and we also ran Azonia. So we had a lot of races going. So ice racing was a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And there were some pictures from the different ice racing, but we also did the Lamb's Farm, and I have footage from that. So I'll show you a little clip of ice racing at Lamb's Farm, 1984. And at that race, I'm going to show you the one race that's probably one of the greatest races you're ever going to see. We had 2 cameras. It's Jerry Westhouse, George Stavanik, and Mike Gilkey. A great race. Watch this.
Welcome to the Lambs. This is the second annual championship race held at the Lambs, and we welcome the opportunity to come here and put on a motorcycle race on their man-made lake. Running 4 classes of ATCs today, and we're running 6 classes of motorcycles.
ATC class.
These are some of the fastest riders in the Midwest, and the Midwest happens to develop some of the fastest ice racers in the country. This is it. This is the final event of the day. The Open Pro class. This is for half the purse and all the honor. We're going to go right back to the battle we had back in the heat race. But jumping out front, Mike Gilkey. Mike Gilkey's from Plano, Illinois. And right behind him, Jerry Westhouse. Mark Ruber's 48. But there comes George Stavanik, 2K on the outside. George is riding Don Herring's bike for this race, and it's a 500 Yamaha. Out front, Mike Gilkey is on a Can-Am. Jerry Westhouse is back on that 750. And 48K is Mark Ruber. He's on a Woods Rotex. Let's watch the action here. Jerry Westhouse jumps out front with that 750. Maybe the horsepower is making a difference today. Maybe the track getting a little bumpy, but remember that bike weighs about 340 pounds and the other bikes weigh both under 300 pounds. Whoa, George has made the move on the inside. George Stavanik, the new Mr. Ice. He's going to show Jerry the way around this racetrack, it looks like today. Jerry ain't backing off, halfway. 4 laps to go. Jerry's got the time. He's got to make that horsepower work for him. Mike Gilkey's back in third. He ain't letting up any. Here comes George. 1 lap to go. Watch this. Downshift into the corner. Same style. Back on the gas. Boy, George, he's going faster than anybody today. George Stavanik from Kenosha, Wisconsin. Mr. Ice, the fastest man on ice, winning this Midwest Championship, 2 classes, the Pro class and the 250 Pro class. George is taking away the biggest chunk of the purse today, and the money today was provided by Yamaha Motors, and it was won by Yamaha. Both classes, George Stavanik, sponsored by Lake County Cycles in Zion. Here comes into the pit, everybody gather around, congratulate.
So what is this campaign about here?
So you don't know the whole story of my first political campaign?
I don't know.
Okay. Ronald Reagan is the president. Up until 1980, I sort of was a Democrat. You live in Chicago, you're a Democrat. Everybody's a Democrat.
Wow,
I mean,
that's surprising.
brainless. People are brainless. But my dad did tell me that he voted for Nixon because Nixon promised to cut taxes. So we're talking even in, when Nixon was around, and everybody said Nixon was the worst. No, Nixon was really a great president. He made one little mistake with the Watergate thing, which is minor. I mean, when you compare it to the evil stuff going on now between the FBI and the Comey, I mean, Watergate is a minor incident. I mean, all Nixon was trying to do was protect his guys. He never ordered anybody to break in. In fact, it was probably his attorney, Dean, that sent them in to the Democratic headquarters to get pictures of his wife out of the headquarters. I mean, that's the true story from G. Gordon Liddy. But Reagan, I had one customer on a coffee truck. I should give her credit right now. Her name was Kathy Baylor, absolutely gorgeous, and a Republican. And she would laugh at me. She would say, "How come you're not you're a businessman? You own your own business. How can you not be a Republican?" And she opened up my eyes. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I'll give her credit every day of the week. So Reagan, the economy is taking off. If you cut taxes, people will spend money. If you cut taxes to millionaires, they'll make more money. I mean, if you can make $200,000, you can make $1 million and only have to pay 15%. You're going to work harder. You're not going to bust your ass to make $2 million, and you got to turn half of it over to government. I mean, how many people you know work overtime? And I know this is a fact. This is God fact. I got the coffee truck. People working construction. You know how many construction workers would turn down overtime?
Like none, probably.
All of them.
All of them?
Because if they work overtime, they would put them into a higher tax bracket.
Oh, right, yeah.
So instead of paying, at that time, maybe 18%, they'd be pushed to 24%. You know, back then there was multiple tax. I mean, John F. Kennedy in 1961, during the war, taxes were 90%. Millionaires were paying 90% tax.
Wow.
But you could own 40 houses. So you could write off all the expenses of 40 houses and pay your 90%. But by the time you wrote off all your mortgages, you weren't paying the 90%. Kennedy knew bring down taxes to 70%, right? And people, it was John F. Kennedy. All you people out there, fake news, ABC, you know, all you guys. A rising boat lifts, a rising tide lifts all boats. John F. Kennedy said that. John F. Kennedy, you know, St. John F. Kennedy, the Democrat, cut taxes. So then Reagan comes along, he cuts taxes down to 30%, from 70 to 30 on the high end. So there was 3 tax brackets. The economy took off. People had money. So I'm living in the 11th Congressional District then. Frank Annunzio, this dead guy, this old Italian guy that came through the mob out of Taylor Street on the northwest side, he's the congressman. And you know, everything Reagan wants to do, he's voting against. So I said, this is insane. So I decided I'm going to run. I didn't know any Republican. I knew nothing. I knew nothing. But I got my name on the ballot. I went out and got the signatures. I went door to door. I think I need 200 signatures, 250. Well, not a lot of signatures. I got them all. Mm-hmm. They were all good. I had the poll sheets. I had a fight to stay on the ballot, but Chuck Tush beat me in the primary, and that was my. But then after that, I joined Fred Harmon, and I worked in the 45th Ward. So I am, and I will continue to be a solid Ronald Reagan constitutional conservative. I believe in life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, God, country, and the flag. How's that? So that's what that is. Let me add this. For a good number of years, your grandmother Kathy, Bridget, and Danny, we would go to Daytona. I mean, there was a couple years I just ran the short track at Daytona. And I don't have any pictures from that. But we would go to Daytona, and in fact, one year, you want to hear the Bridget? No, we can't tell the Bridget story in Disneyland. But one year I know we stayed in Orlando, and I commuted back and forth between Daytona. So Kathy and the kids were in Orlando, staying at a hotel, and I made the commute of 50 miles, and I was racing at Daytona. Exactly what year it is, but I mean, your dad was at Daytona quite a bit. Yeah. So yeah, both of you know.
Yeah, he's definitely told me stories before.
Right.
Yeah.
Great stories. And that's the first time we ever went to a Wendy's.
Oh, wow.
Was at Daytona. Okay, that's it. Tune in next week. We're going to continue on the history of motorcycle racing in the Midwest. It's my story, but believe me, there's a lot of people that are watching this and saying the same thing. They were there too, and we were all fortunate. Thank you, Alyssa, as we watch my dear friend Gary Nixon winning in 1967. For more information on Lamb's Farm in Libertyville, Illinois, it's lambsfarm.org. For the American Motorcycle Association, it's americanmotorcyclist.com. For WERA, it's WERA.com. To contact me, it's teamdan45@gmail.com. I love to hear from my audience. Remember, you can always search on YouTube with Dan Schmitt Motorcycle Racing for great motorcycle racing action. and I really wish I could have ran on the beach at Daytona.